I forgot to press the record button. Wah, 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 wah. I think that is all sorted. Well, sorted enough at the moment. My hair is getting at that length where it's poking me in the eye. There we go. I think that's good. Maybe like that? Alrighty. I think that's good. Okay, so we have today our water. And we also have ourselves some beautiful tea. Some nice ginger green tea. Fancy stuff, eh? Alrighty, folks. As we all know, we are going to be reading Moby Dick for this entire week. So this is the Moby Dick week special. And this is my effort to get through as much of this book as possible this week. I don't see it happening, but if I can finish it by the end of this week, which I don't think is possible. I mean, it's only 4 days of reading, but I mean, if I can read a fair amount, this took 7 streams to get to. This is the side I've read. That is the side I still have to read. I'm a bit ambitious, aren't I? But yeah, there we go. The whale. Moby Dick. It is waiting for us to conquer it. Let me just put my keyboard over there. Didn't realize it was gonna be so much in the way. It's been a while. Alrighty, folks. Before we begin, let us first do a quick prayer in thanks. Seems like my light is not the level it should be, but it is actually. Looks a bit weird. Maybe it's because I'm wearing blue today. Alrighty, let us do our quick prayer. Thank you, Lord, for this beautiful day you blessed us with. Thank you for family, friends, and community. Lord, we pray for all those who are currently struggling with health problems, and we pray that you bless them, their families, and their medical support, Lord, with strength, wisdom, and endurance, Lord. Lord, we pray for all the countries that find themselves struggling with turmoil and violence. Lord, we pray that you keep your hand of safety.
Why are you following me?
Hey, please come, welcome in. Thank you for the follow. Alright, where was I? We pray for protection over those who might find themselves in danger, Lord. And we pray that you guide them to safety. And Lord, we pray for peace over them and all these countries, Lord, and we pray for peace over Israel. May your shining light of peace shine not only on us, but on all the world, O Lord. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. Here we go, Nate, welcome in. Welcome to the Wolfcat clan. Yoo-hoo! How did you find me? Welcome in, welcome in. thank you again for the follow. You are just in time to witness my very bad reading. Dylan, hello, welcome in. Thank you for the lurky, lurky. All right, let us get our music back. Hydrate. Okay, you have a choice. Do I hydrate with tea or do I hydrate with water? Tea, water. You stay silent too long, I'm gonna divert to the tea. Let's go over to the scene where everything happens. Whee! There we go. Right, of course. We need to get everything where it should be. Sorry for the rough ride. Yeah, I think that's correct. Alrighty, tea it is. Thank you for the hydrate, Denland. There we go. Let us not forget our trusty ruler. Our very trustiest of rulers. Music isn't too loud, is it? I can lower it a little bit more if it's needed. Let's make it 10. Here we go. Hopefully it's not too loud. So, hopefully it's not too distracting. But do let me know. Also, let me do our quick test. Oh, all caps. A sunfish. Not bad. Not bad at all. Okay. Why? Why small print? Why? And we have a whole chapter just talking about the whiteness of the whale. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I have thought of shelving this book. However, I did say I want to read it, and I did say I want to try and finish it, so... I am going to at least try. Alright, let's go. Chapter 42. The whiteness of the whale. What the white whale was to Ahab has been hinted. What at times he was to me as yet remains unsaid. Aside from those more obvious considerations touching Moby Dick, which could not have but occasionally awakened in any man's soul some alarm, there was another thought, a rather vague, nameless horror concerning him, which at times by its intensity completely overpowered all the rest, and yet so mystical and well nigh ineffable was it, that I almost despair of putting it in a comprehensible form. Well, if you suffered to put it in words, why do you make us suffer by reading those words? Alright. Okay, I'll stop. Warning and apologies beforehand. You might hear some protest from me and complaints. I believe you've already witnessed them. But I apologize beforehand. More will most definitely be coming. Alright. It was the whiteness of the whale that above all things appalled me. But how can I hope to explain myself here? And yet, in some dim, random way, explain myself I must. Else all these chapters might be naught. You don't have to, but okay. Though in many natural objects, whiteness refiningly enhances beauty, as if imparting some special virtue of its own, as in marbles, japonicas, and pearls. And though various nations have in some way recognized a certain royal preeminence in this hue, even though the barbaric grand old kings of Pegu, placing the title Lord of the White Elephants above all their other magniloquent ascriptions of dominion, and the modern kings of Siam unfurling the some Snow White quadrupled in the royal standard, and the Hanoverian flag bearing the one figure of a snow white charger, and the great Austrian Empire, Caesarian, heir to overlording Rome, having for the imperial color the same imperial hue. And though this preeminence in it applies to the human race itself, giving the white man ideal mastership over every dusky tribe, and though besides all this, whiteness have been even made significant of gladness, for among the Romans a white stone marked a joyful day, and though in other mortal sympathies and symbolizings, this same hue is made emblem of many touching, noble things. The innocence of brides, the benignity of age. Though among the red men of America the giving of the white belt of wampum was the deepest pledge of honor, though in many climes whiteness typifies the majesty of justice in the ermine of the judge, and contributes to the daily state of kings and queens drawn by milk-white steeds. Though even in the higher mysteries of the most august religions, it has been made the symbol of the divine spotlessness and power. By the Persian fire worshippers, the white forked flame being held the holiest on the altar. And in the Greek mythologies, great Jove himself, being made incarnate in a snow-white bull, and though to the noble Eriquus, the midwinter sacrifice of the sacred white dog was by far the holiest festival of their theology. That spotless, faithful creature being held the purest envoy they could send to the Great Spirit with the annual tidings of their own fidelity. And though directly from the Latin word for white, all Christian priests derive the name of one part of their sacred vesture, the alb or tunic, worn beneath the cassock. And though among the holy pomps of the Romish faith, white is specially employed in the celebration of the Passion of our Lord, though in the vision of St. John, white robes are given to the redeemed, and the 24 elders stand clothed in white before the great white throne. And the Holy One that sitteth there, white like wool, yet for all these accumulated associations, with whatever is sweet and honorable and sublime, there yet lurks an elusive something in the innermost idea of this hue, which strikes more of a panic to the soul than that redness which affrights in blood. The elusive quality it is, this elusive quality it is, which causes the thought of whiteness, when divorced from more kindly associations and coupled with any object terrible in itself, to heighten that terror to the furthermost bounds. Witness the white bear of the poles and the white shark of the tropics. What but their smooth, flaky whiteness makes them the transcendent horrors they are? That ghastly whiteness, it is which imparts such an abhorrent mildness, even more lonesome than terrific, to the dumb gloating of their aspect, so that not the fleece-fanged tiger in his heraldic coat can so stagger courage as the white-shrouded bear or shark. And here we have our first small writing. With reference to the polar bear, it may possibly be urged by him who would fain go still deeper into this matter, that it is not the whiteness separately regarded with Hitchens. Okay, it carries on and then into here. Can I skip this? Why didn't they just put it above this part? Since they already have like a little one over here, why didn't they just put it above this part? Now they put it in between here, it's very confusing. There's a one over here, And there's a one over here. I don't know, these... I'm gonna skip all of this. And I'm just gonna read that. Okay, so that not the fierce fanged tiger in his heraldic coat can so stagger courage as the white-shrouded bear or shark. Bethink thee of the albatross. Whence come those clouds of spiritual wonderment and pale dread in which that white phantom sails in all imaginations? Not Coleridge first... What? Not Coleridge first threw that spell, but God's great unflattering laureate, nature. I don't know, this guy is just going on a tangent here at this... in my opinion. Most famous in our Western annals, in Indian traditions, is that of the white steed of the prairies, a magnificent milk-white charger, large-eyed, small-headed, bluff-chested, and with the dignity of 1,000 monarchs in his lofty, over-scorning carriage. He was the elected Xerxes of vast herds of wild horses, whose pastures in those days were only fenced by the Rocky Mountains and the Alleghanies. I've never heard of Alleghanies, but okay. Let me see, can I fit this in nicely? Apparently not. I'll have to move it anyway. It's okay. At their flaming head he westward trooped it like that chosen star which every evening leads on the hosts of light. The flashing cascade of his mane, the curving comet of his tail, invested him with housings more resplendent than gold and silver beaters, could have furnished him. A most imperial and angelical apparition of that unfallen western world, which to the eyes of the old trappers and hunters revived the glories of those primeval times when Adam walked majestic as a god. Yeah. Bluff-browed and fearless as this mighty steed, whether marching amid his aides and marshals in the van of countless cohorts that endlessly streamed it over the plains like an Ohio or whatever, or whether with his circumambient subjects browsing all around at the horizon, the white steed gallopingly reviewed them with warm nostrils reddening through his cool milkiness. In whatever aspect he represented himself, always to the bravest Indians, he was the object of trembling reverence and awe. Nor can it be questioned from what stands on legendary record of this noble horse, that it was his spiritual whiteness chiefly, which so clothed him with divineness, and that his divineness had that in it which, though commanding worship, at the same time enforced a certain nameless terror. But there are other instances where this whiteness loses all that accessory and strange glory which invests it in the white steed and albatross. What is it that in the albino man so peculiarly repels and often shocks the eye, as that sometimes he is loathed by his own kith and kin? It is that whiteness which invests him, the thing expressed by the name he bears. The albino is as well made as another man, has no substantive deformity, and yet this mere aspect of all-pervading whiteness makes him more strangely hideous than the ugliest abortion. Why should this be so? Interesting question. Nor in quite other aspects does nature in her least palpable but not the less malicious agencies fail to enlist among her forces this crowning attribute of the terrible. From its snowy aspect, the gauntleted ghost of the southern seas has been denominated the white squall. Nor in some historic instances has the art of human malice omitted so potent an auxiliary. How wildly it heightens the effect of that passage of Froissart, when massed in the snowy symbol of their faction, the desperate White Hoods of Ghent murdered their bailiff in the marketplace. Wow. They murdered their bailiff? That's not cool. Not cool at all. Nor in some things does the common what a tongue twister. Hereditary notifications didn't work. Very strange. Oh no! Oh, welcome back, Data. How is you? Welcome in. Nor in some things does the common hereditary experience of all mankind fail to bear witness to the supernaturalism of this hue. It cannot be well doubted that the one visible quality in the aspect of the dead which most appalls the gazer is a marble pallor lingering there, as if indeed that pallor were as much like the badge of consternation in the other world as of mortal trepidation here. And from that pallor of the dead we borrow the expressive hue of the shroud in which we wrap them. How are you, Data? I'm struggling with words today. Nor even in our superstitions do we fail to throw the same snowy mountain? My brain and my mouth, they're not communicating very well. Nor even in our superstitions do we fail to throw the same snowy mantle around our phantoms. All ghosts rising in a milk-white fog. Yeah, while these terrors seize us, let us add that even the King of Terrors, when personified by the evangelist, rides on his pallid horse. Therefore, in other moods, symbolize whatever grand or gracious thing he will be. He will, by whiteness no man can deny, that in its profoundest idealized significance calls up a peculiar apparition to the soul. But though without dissent, this point be fixed, how is mortal man to account for it? To analyze it would seem impossible. Can we then, by the citation of some of those instances wherein this thing of whiteness, though for the time either wholly or in great part stripped of all direct associations, calculated to import to it aught fearful, but nevertheless is found to exert over us the same sorcery, however modified? Can we thus hope to light up some chance clue to conduct us to the hidden cause we seek? How long is this? Another 1, 2, 3.5 pages, all about talking about how strange and scary whiteness can be, or rather the hue of whiteness, like white horses and phantoms and ghosts and I don't know what else. I am getting fed up with this chapter. Standard Monday night, but next door dog was barking all day. I nearly blew a fuse. Understandable, Data. Very much understandable. Okay, in summary. The color white is scary, especially when it's associated with powerful animals that can kill you. And let us just skip that, shall we? Because it's getting annoying. Okay. That chapter is kind of like a barking dog for me. Yeah, we're not missing much. So I'm just going to skip that. Alright. Chapter 43. Hark. Hist! Did you hear that noise, Kabako? It was the middle watch. A fair moonlight. The seamen were standing in a cordon, extending from one of the freshwater butts in the waist to the scuttlebutt near the taffrail. In this manner they passed the buckets to fill the scuttlebutt, standing for the most part on the hollowed precincts of the quarterdeck. They were careful not to squeak or rustle their feet. From hand to hand the buckets went in the deepest silence, only broken by the occasional flap of a sail, and the steady hum of the unceasingly advancing keel. It was in the midst of this repose that Archie, one of the cordon, whose post was near the after hatches, whispered to his neighbor, a cholo, the words above. Hist! Did you hear that noise? Kabako? Take the bucket, will ye, Archie? What noise do you mean? There it is again, under the hatches. Don't you hear it? A cough. It sounded like a cough. Cough be damned. Pass along that return bucket. There again. There it is. It sounds like 2 or 3 sleepers turning over now. Caramba! Have done, shipmate, will ye? It's the 3 soaked biscuits ye eat for supper turning over inside of ye. Nothing else. Look at the bucket. Or rather, look to the bucket. I'm proud of myself though, because I eventually decided to just ignore that noisy dog and put on some tunes instead. Yeah, I would have probably just gone for a walk or something. But yeah, good on you, Data. Good on you. Put on some tunes, block it out, have a party, yeah. It's a good thing I'm not their neighbor, because I have speakers as tall as this from the floor. Let's just say they would have been pounding. Some bass-filled music, the whole place would hate me. Everybody would hear what I'm playing. Yeah, well. You have a very powerful TV? Nice, nice. Yeah, that's good, that's good. My old Boston acoustics. Well, it's not even mine, it's Hubs's. He's had them since before we met. So they are no longer new, but they are still crisp and clear. And if you have the volume high enough, the whole house vibrates. Imagine that in one of those apartment buildings. Yeah, I wouldn't be very popular. In fact, I would actually even take requests from my neighbors. Hey, what do you want to listen to? I don't want to listen to that dog yapping, but I'm willing to play whatever you want to listen to. Dolby Atmos. Alrighty. Let us continue. Say what you will, shipmate. I've sharp ears. Aye, you are the chap, ain't ye, that heard the hum of the old Quakeress knitting needles 50 miles at sea from Nantucket. You're the chap. Grin away, we'll see what turns up. Hark ye, Kabako. There is somebody down in the afterhold that has not yet been seen on deck. These guys are eavesdropping. There's somebody down in the afterhold. And I suspect our old mogul knows something of it too. I heard Stubb tell Flask one morning watch that there was something of that sort in the wind. Tish, the bucket! Chapter 44. The Chart. When you followed Captain Ahab down into his cabin after the squall that took place on the night succeeding that wild ratification of his purpose with his crew, you would have seen him go to a locker in the transom and bring out a large wrinkled roll of yellowish sea charts, spread them before him on his screwed-down table. Then, seating himself before it, you would have seen him intently study the various lines and shadings which there met his eye, and with slow but steady pencil trace additional courses over spaces that before were blank. At intervals you would refer to piles of old logbooks beside him, wherein were set down the seasons and places in which, on various former voyages of various ships, sperm whales had been captured or seen. While thus employed, the heavy pewter lamp suspended in chains over his head continually rocked with the motion of the ship, and forever threw shifting gleams and shadows of lines upon his wrinkled brow, till it almost seemed that while he himself was marking out lines and courses on the wrinkled charts, some invisible pencil was also tracing lines and courses upon the deeply marked chart of his forehead. But it was not this night in particular that, in the solitude of his cabin, Ahab thus pondered over his charts. Almost every night they were brought out. Almost every night some pencil marks were effaced, and others were substituted. For with the charts of all 4 oceans before him, Ahab was threading a maze of currents and eddies, with a view to the more certain accomplishment of that monomaniac thought of his soul. Now, to any one not fully acquainted with the ways of the Leviathans, it might seem an absurdly hopeless task thus to seek out one solitary creature in the unhooped oceans of this planet. But not so did it seem to Ahab, who knew the sets of all tides and currents, and thereby calculating the driftings of the sperm whale's food, and also calling to mind the regular, ascertained seasons for hunting him in particular latitudes, could arrive at reasonable surmises, almost approaching to certainties, concerning the timeliest day to be upon this or that ground in search of his prey. So assured, indeed, is the fact concerning the periodicalness of the sperm whales resorting to given waters, that many hunters believe that, could he be closely observed and studied throughout the world, were the logs for one voyage of the entire whale fleet carefully collated, and the migrations of the sperm whale would be found to correspond in invariability to those of the herring shoals or the flights of swallows. On this hint, attempts have been made to construct elaborate migratory charts of the sperm whale. Besides, when making a passage from one feeding ground to another, the sperm whales, guided by some infallible instinct, say rather secret intelligence from the deity, mostly swim in veins, as they are called, continuing their way along a given ocean line with such undeviating given ocean line with such accuracy that no ship ever sailed her course by any chart with 1/5 of such marvelous precision. Though in these cases the direction taken by any one whale be straight as a surveyor's parallel, and though the line of advance be strictly confined to its own unavoidable straight wake, yet the arbitrary vein in which at these times he is said to swim generally embraces some few miles in width, more or less as the vein is presumed to expand or contract, but never exceeds the visual sweep from the whale ship's mastheads when circumspectly gliding along this magic zone. The sum is that at particular seasons within that breadth and along that path migrating whales may with great confidence be looked for, and hence not only at substantiated times upon well-known separate feeding grounds could Ahab hope to encounter his prey, but in crossing the widest expanses of water between those grounds he could, by his art, so place and time itself on his way, as even then not the wholly without prospect of a meeting. There was a circumstance which at first sight seemed to entangle his delirious but still methodical scheme, but not so in the reality, perhaps. Though the gregarious sperm whales have their regular seasons for particular grounds, yet in general you cannot conclude that the herds which haunted such and such a latitude or longitude this year, say, will turn out to be identically the same with those that were found there the preceding season. Though there are peculiar and unquestionable instances where the contrary of this has proved true. In general, the same remark, only within a less wide limit, applies to the solitaries and hermits among the matured aged sperm whales. So that though Moby Dick had in a former year been seen, for example, on what is called the Seychelles Ground in the Indian Ocean, or Volcano Bay on the Japanese coast, yet it did not follow that were the Pequod to visit either of those spots at any subsequent corresponding season, she would infallibly encounter him there. So too with some other feeding grounds where he had at times revealed himself. But all these seemed only his casual stopping places and ocean inns, so to speak, not his place of prolonged abode, and where Ahab's chances of accomplishing his object have hitherto been spoken of, allusion has only been made to whatever wayside antecedent extra prospects were his ere a particular set time or place were attained, when all possibilities would become probabilities. And, as Ahab fondly thought, every possibility the next thing to a certainty. The That particular set time and place were conjoined in the one technical phrase, the season on the line. For there and then, for several consecutive years, Moby Dick had been periodically descried, lingering in those waters for a while, as the sun, in its annual round, loiters for a predicted interval in any one sign of the zodiac. There it was, too, that most of the deadly encounters with the white whale had taken place. There the waves were storied with his deeds. There also was the tragic spot where the monomaniac old man had found the awful motive to his vengeance. But in the cautious comprehensiveness and unloitering vigilance with which Ahab threw his brooding soul into this unfaltering hunt, he would not permit himself to rest all his hopes upon the one crowning fact above mentioned. However flattering it might be to those hopes, nor in the sleeplessness of his vow could he so tranquilize his unquiet heart as to postpone all intervening quest. Now the Pequod had sailed from Nantucket at the very beginning of the season on the line. No possible endeavor could enable her commander to make the great passage southward, double Cape Horn, and then running down 60 degrees of latitude, arrive in the equatorial Pacific in time to cruise there. Therefore he must wait for the next ensuing season. Yet the premature hour of the Pequod's sailing had, perhaps, been correctly selected by Ahab, with a view to this very complexion of things, because an interval of 365 days and nights before him, an interval which, instead of impatiently enduring in shore, he would spend in a miscellaneous hunt. If by chance the white whale, spending his vacation in seas far remote from his periodical feeding grounds, should turn up his wrinkled brow off the Persian Gulf, or in the Bengal Bay, or China Seas, or in any other waters haunted by his race, so that monsoons, pampas, nor'westers, harmattans, traders, any wind but the levanter and simoon might blow Moby Dick into the devious zigzag world circle of the Pequod's circumnavigating wake. But granting all this, yet regarded discreetly and coolly, seems it not but a mad idea, this, that in the broad boundless ocean, one solitary whale, even if encountered, should be thought capable of individual recognition from his hunter, even as a white-bearded mufti in the thronged thoroughfares of Constantinople. What does Constantinople have anything to do with this? Anyway, yes, for the peculiar snow-white brow of Moby Dick and his snow-white hump could not but be unmistakable, and have it not tallied the whale, Ahab would mutter to himself, as after poring over his charts till long after midnight he would throw himself back in reveries, tallied him and shall he escape? His broad fins are bored and scalloped out like a lost sheep's, I take it probably ear. And here his mad wind would run on in a breathless race, till a weariness and faintness of pondering came over him, and in the open air of the deck he would seek to recover his strength. Ah, God, what trances of torments does that man endure who is consumed with one unachievable, revengeful desire. He sleeps with clenched hands and wakes with his own bloody nails in his palms. Often, when forced from his hammock by exhausting and intolerably vivid dreams of the night, which, resuming his own intense thoughts through the day, carried them on amid a clashing of frenzies, and whirled them around and around and around in his blazing brain, till the very throbbing of his life-spot became insufferable anguish. And when, as was sometimes the case, these spiritual throes in him heaved his being up from its base, and a chasm seemed opening in him, from which forked flames and lightnings shot up, and accursed fiends beckoned him to leap down among them. When this hell in himself yawned beneath him, a wild cry would be heard through the ship, and with glaring eyes Ahab would burst from his stateroom, as though escaping from a bed that was on fire. Yet these, perhaps, instead of being the unsuppressible symptoms of some latent weakness or fright at his own resolve, were but the plainest tokens of its intensity. For at such times crazy Ahab, the scheming, unappeasedly steadfast hunter of the white whale, this Ahab that had gone to his hammock, was not the agent that so caused him to burst from it in horror again. The latter was the eternal, living principle or soul in him, and in sleep being for the time dissociated from the characterizing mind, which at other times employed it for its outer vehicle or agent. It spontaneously sought escape from the scorching contiguity of the frantic thing, of which, for the time, it was no longer integral. But as the mind does not exist unless leagued with the soul, therefore it must have been that, in Ahab's case, yielding up all his thoughts and fancies to his one supreme purpose, that purpose, by its own sheer inveteracy of will, forced itself against gods and devils into a kind of self-assumed, independent being of its own. Nay, could grimly live and burn while the common vitality to which it was conjoined fled horror-stricken from the unbidden and unfathered birth. Therefore the tormented spirit that glared out of bodily eyes when that seemed Ahab rushed from his room was for the time but a vacated thing, a formless, somnambulistic being, a ray of living light, to be sure, but without an object to color, and therefore a blankness in itself. God help thee, old man. Thy thoughts have created a creature in thee, and whose intense thinking thus make him a Prometheus. A vulture feeds upon that heart forever, that vulture the very creature he creates. The old man is very angry, and he has nightmares. I just said a whole chapter in one sentence. goodness. I think I'm seeing another chapter I am going to skip. This guy is trying to explain something, but he doesn't quite realize the more he explains, the less I understand. Because now we're going back in time again and talking about whaling in general and oil and blah blah and Nantucket and some other previous captain and some commodore. And not a mention of Ahab or any of the other guys in this chapter. And in the surmises, we continue with Ahab. I don't know, I seem to be losing all my patience for this book. The Mapmaker. Oh yeah, there's definitely gonna be chapters skipped. Chapter 45, The Affidavit. That's it. That's all I'm reading of that. Right. Chapter 46, Surmises. Though consumed with the hot fire of his purpose, Ahab, in all his thoughts and actions, ever had in view the ultimate capture of Moby Dick. Though he seemed ready to sacrifice all mortal interests to that one passion, nevertheless it may have been that he was by nature and long habituation far too wedded to a fiery whalesman's ways altogether to abandon the collateral prosecution of the voyage. Or at least, if this were otherwise, there were not wanting other motives, much more influential with him. It would be refining too much, perhaps even considering his monomania, to hint that his vindictiveness towards the white whale might have possibly extended itself in some degree to all sperm whales, and that the more monsters he slew, by so much the more he multiplied the chances that each subsequently encountered whale would prove to be the hated one he hunted. But if such an hypothesis by indeed exceptionable, there were still additional considerations, which, though not so strictly according with the wildness of his ruling passion, yet were by no means incapable of swaying him. To accomplish his object, Ahab must use tools, and of all tools used in the shadow of the moon, men are most apt to get out of order. He knew, for example, that however magnetic his ascendancy in some respects was over Starbuck, yet that ascendancy did not cover the complete spiritual man any more than mere corporeal superiority involves intellectual mastership. For to the purely spiritual, the intellectual but stand in a sort of corporeal relation. Starbuck's body and Starbuck's coerced will were Ahab's, so long as Ahab kept his magnet at Starbuck's brain. Still, he knew that for all this the chief mate in his soul abhorred his captain's quest, and would joyfully disintegrate himself from it, or even frustrate it. It might be that a long interval would elapse ere the white whale was seen. During that long interval, Starbuck would ever be apt to fall into open relapses of rebellion against his captain's leadership, unless some ordinary, prudential, circumstantial influences were brought to bear upon him. Not only that, but the subtle insanity of Ahab respecting Moby Dick was nowadays more significantly manifested than in his superlative sense and shrewdness in foreseeing that for the present the hunt should in some way be stripped of that strange, imaginative impiousness which naturally invested it. That the full terror of the voyage must be kept withdrawn into the obscure background, for a few men's courage is proof against protracted meditation unrelieved by action. Anyway, that when they stood their long night watches, his officers and men must have some near things to think of than Moby Dick. For however eagerly and impetuously the savage crew had hailed the announcement of his quest, yet all sailors of all sorts are more or less capricious and unreliable. They live in the varying outer weather, and they inhale its fickleness, and when retained for any object remote and blank in a pursuit, however promissory, of life and passion in the end, it is above all things requisite that temporary interests and employments should intervene and hold them healthily suspended for the final dash. Nor was Ahab unmindful of another thing. In times of strong emotion, mankind disdain all base considerations, but such times are evanescent. The permanent constitutional condition of the manufactured man, thought Ahab, is a sordidness. Granting that the white whale fully incites the hearts of this my savage crew, and playing round their savageness even breeds a certain generous knight-errantism in them, still, while for the love of it they give chase to Moby Dick, they must also have food for their more common daily appetites. For even the high-lifted and chivalric crusaders of all times were not content to traverse 2,000 miles of land to fight for their holy sepulchre without committing burglaries, picking pockets, and gaining their pious perquisites by the way. Had they been strictly held to their one final and romantic object, that final and romantic object too many would have turned from in disgust. It will not strip these men, thought Ahab, of all hopes of cash. Aye, cash. They may scorn cash now, but let some months go by and no prospective promise of it to them, and then the same quiescent cash, all at once, mutinying them, the same cash which sooner cashier Ahab. Nor was there wanting still another precautionary motive more related to Ahab's personally. Having impulsively, it is probable, and perhaps somewhat prematurely, revealed the prime but private purpose of the Pequod's voyage. Ahab was now entirely conscious that, in doing so, he had indirectly laid himself open to the unanswerable charge of usurpation, and with perfect impunity, both moral and legal. His crew is if so disposed, and to that end competent, could refuse all further obedience to him, and even violently wrest from him the command. From even the barely hinted imputation of usurpation, and the possible consequences of such a suppressed impression gaining ground, Ahab must of course have been most anxious to protect himself. That protection could only consist in his own predominating brain and heart and hand, backed by a heedful, closely calculating attention to every minute atmospheric influence which it was possible for his crew to be subjected to. For all these reasons then, and others perhaps too analytic to be verbally developed here, Ahab plainly saw that he must still in a good degree continue true to the natural, nominal purpose of the Pequod's voyage. Observe all customary usages, and not only that, but force himself to evince all his well-known passionate interest in the general pursuit of his profession. Be all this as it may, his voice was now often heard hailing the 3 mastheads and admonishing them to keep a bright lookout, and not omit reporting even a porpoise. This vigilance was not long without reward. There we go. It is now break time, people, and not a moment too soon because, well, when we come back, we have some dialogue. Let's go! Break time! Indeeds, indeeds. Alrighty then. Let us go and have ourselves something to eat and something to drink. And I shall see you guys after the break. But, let me put my alarm. Here we go, 30 minutes on the clock. And I shall see you all after the break. Let me know what you had for snacks and drinks. And remember, stretch out your limbs, maybe go for a walk, and take care of yourselves. Let me know what you had for munchies and drinks after the break. BRB.
Two hours later.
Hello everybody, welcome back from the break. Hope you all had a fantastic little break. And let's take it back down. Where did I have it? I don't know. But there we go. We have soft music in the background. At least I hope you guys can hear it. Otherwise, if you don't, that's also fine. There we go. I had good nums, indeed, and welcome back to you too, Sir Data. What did you have? I had my leftover tea after I warmed it up, and I had a pie that was left over from the weekend. I don't know why my ad breaks are happening on weird times, because it was supposed to happen during the break. Oh well, we'll just I suppose use it for a while. I don't know. Meh. So your snack was meh? What's wrong? What was wrong with your snack? Why was it meh? But it might have to wait until I get paid tomorrow night. Ah. Whew. That was quite the sneeze. Alrighty, let us continue then. Ooh, let's go! A 5-stream streak! Let's go! 5 bacons! Nice. Much good. Much nice there, Data. GG's on the 5-stream streak. Alrighty, now with that hypeness, let us continue our story, shall we? Chapter 47. The Mat Maker. It was a cloudy, sultry afternoon. The seamen were lazily lounging about the decks, or vacantly gazing over into the lead-colored waters. Queequeg and I mildly employed weaving what is called a sword mat for an additional lashing to our boat. So still and subdued, and yet somehow preluding what was all the scene, and such an incantation of revelry lurked in the air, that each silent sailor seemed resolved into his own invisible self. It was the attendant or page of Queequeg, while busy at the mat. As I kept passing and repassing the filling or woof of marline between the long yarns of the warp, using my own hand for the shuttle, and as Queequeg, standing sideways, ever and anon slid his heavy oaken sword between the threads, and idly looking off upon the water, carelessly and unthinkingly drove home every yarn. I say, so strange a dreaminess did there then reign over all over the ship, and all over the sea, only broken by the intermitting dull sound of the sword, and it seemed as if this were the loom of time, and I myself were a shuttle, mechanically weaving and weaving away at the fates. There lay the fixed threads of the warp, subject to but one single, ever-returning, unchanging vibration, and that vibration merely enough to admit of the crosswise interblending of other threads with its own. This warp seemed necessity, and here, thought I, with my own hand I ply my own shuttle, and weave my own destiny into these unalterable threads. Meantime, Queequeg's impulsive, indifferent sword, sometimes hitting the woof, slantingly, or crookedly, or strongly, or weakly, as the case may be, and by this difference in the concluding blow, producing a corresponding contrast in the final aspect of the completed fabric. This savage sword, thought I, which thus finely shapes and fashions both warp and woof, this easy, indifferent sword must be chance. Aye, chance, free will, and necessity, nowise incompatible. Interweavingly working together, the straight warp of necessity, not to be swerved from its ultimate course, its every alterating vibration, indeed, only tending to that. Free will still free to ply her shuttle between given threads, and chance, though restrained in its play, within the right lines of necessity, and sideways in its motions, directed by free will, though thus prescribed to by both. Chance by turns rules either, and has the last featuring blow at events. So they're all like in this dreamy state. It's all so calm and stuff like that. And only Creepy Pro, hello, welcome to the stream. Thank you for the lurk, and God bless you too, good sir. Alrighty, let us continue. Thus, we were weaving and weaving away when I started at a sound so strange, long drawn and musically wild and unearthly, that the ball of free will dropped from my hand, and I stood gazing up at the clouds, whence that voice dropped like a wing. High aloft in the crossed trees was that mad gay header, Tashtego, His body was reaching eagerly forward, his hand stretched out like a wand, and at brief, sudden intervals he continued his cries. To be sure, the same sound was that very moment perhaps being heard all over the seas, from hundreds of whalemen's lookouts perched as high in the air. But from few of those lungs could that accustomed old cry have derived such a marvelous cadence as from Tashtigo, the Indians. As he stood hovering over you half suspended in air, so wildly and eagerly peering towards the horizon, you would have thought him some prophet or seer beyond the shadows of fate, and by those wild cries announcing their coming. "There she blows! There, there, there! She blows! She blows!" "Where away?" "On the lee beam, about 2 miles off, a school of 'em." Instantly all was commotion. The sperm whale blows as the clock ticks, with the same undeviating and reliable uniformity, and thereby whalemen distinguished this fish from other tribes of his genus. "There go flukes!" was now the cry from Tashtigo, and the whales disappeared. "Quick, steward!" cried Ahab. "Time! Time!" Doughboy hurried up below, glanced at the watch, and reported the exact minute to Ahab. The ship was now kept away from the wind, and she went gently rolling before it, Tashtigo reporting that the whales had gone down heading to leeward. We confidently looked to see them again, directly in advance of our bows. For that singular craft at times evinced by the sperm whale when, sounding with his head in one direction, he nevertheless, while consumed beneath the surface, mills around and swiftly swims off in the opposite quarter. This deceitfulness of his could not now be in action, for there was no reason to suppose that the fish seen by Tashtigo had been in any way alarmed, or indeed knew at all of our vicinity. One of the men selected for shipkeepers, that is, those not appointed to the boats, by this time relieved the Indian at the main masthead. The sailors at the fore and mizzen had come down. The line tubs were fixed in their places, the cranes were thrust out, the mainyards were backed, and the 3 boats swung over the sea like 3 sapphire baskets over high cliffs. Samphire. Okay. Outside of the bulwarks, their eager crews with one hand clung to the rail, while one foot was expectantly poised on the gunwale. So look the long line of man-of-war's men about to throw themselves on board an enemy's ship. But at this critical instant a sudden exclamation was heard that took every eye from the whale. With a start all glared at dark Ahab, who was surrounded by 5 dusky phantoms that seemed fresh formed out of air. Phantoms again! What shall we do with this guy and his phantoms? Chapter 84. The First Lowering. The phantoms, for so they then seemed, were flitting on the other side of the deck, and with a noiseless celerity were casting loose the tackles and bands of the boat which swung there. This boat had always been deemed one of the spare boats, though technically called the captain's, on account of its hanging from the starboard quarter. The figure that now stood by its bows was tall and swart, with one white tooth evilly protruding from its steel-like lips, a rumpled Chinese jacket of black cotton, funerally, I guess, invested him, with wide black trousers of the same dark stuff, but strangely crowning his ebonness was a glistening white pleated turban, the living hair braided and coiled round and round upon his head. Less swart in aspect. The companions of this figure were of that vivid tiger-yellow complexion peculiar to some of the aboriginal natives of the Manilas, a race notorious for certain diabolism of subtlety. I think they meant to say subtlety, not of subtlety. There we go. Yeah, subtlety. And by some honest white mariners supposed to be the paid spies and secret confidential agents on the water of the devil, their lord, whose counting room they supposed to be elsewhere. While yet the wondering ship's company were gazing upon these strangers, Ahab cried out to the white-turbaned old man at their head, "Already there, Fedallah?" "Ready," was the half-hissed reply. "Lower away then, ye hear?" shouting across the deck. "Lower away there, I say." Such was the thunder of his voice that, spite of their amazement, the men sprang over the rail. The sheaves whirled around in the blocks, and with a wallow, the 3 boats dropped into the sea, while with a dexterous, off-handed daring, unknown in any other vocation, the sailors, goat-like, leaped down the rolling ship's side into the tossed boats below. A print mistake? No, I don't think it was a print mistake. I think they got the right word there, but my brain sometimes, like I say, I sometimes struggle to read the words. Like there was earlier a set of words that I couldn't read, but I know what they meant, so I replaced it with the word that I knew how to say, which was accuracy. Basically changing 2 words into 1. That happens sometimes. And that one was the worst one. And then this one, it was the right word, but my brain had the other word in mind. So I just had to fix that. Yeah, pages might cause snow blindness. That's true. That's why I don't have my lamp very bright. It's only on the first brightness, because I already have light from there and from there, which doesn't give direct light but ambient light. And then I've got the lamp itself right here. Right here. Because it's so close, I don't see the need to make it any brighter. Because if I do, then I really have snow blindness going on. So I only use it on the first one. Yeah. Which helps a lot when it comes to reading. But sometimes my brain still struggles with some words, even words that I know, still struggles sometimes. Don't know why. It is a strange phenomenon. Okay, so the men jumped into the tossed boats below. Hardly had they pulled out from under the ship's lee, when a fourth keel, coming from the windward side, pulled around the stern and showed the 5 strangers rowing Ahab, who, standing erect in the stern, loudly hailed Starbuck, Stubb, and Flask to spread themselves widely, so as to cover a large expanse of water. But with all their eyes again riveted upon the swart Fedella and his crew, the inmates of the other boats obeyed not the command. "Captain Ahab," said Starbuck. "Spread yourselves," cried Ahab. "Give way all 4 boats. Thou, Flask, pull out more to leeward." "Aye, aye, sir," cheerily cried little King Post, sweeping around his great steering oar. "Lay back," addressing his crew. "There, there. There again. There she blows, right ahead, boys. Lay back." "Never heed yonder yellow boys, Archie." "Oh, I don't mind 'em, sir," said Archie. "I knew it all before now. Didn't I hear 'em in the hold? And didn't I tell Kabako here of it? What say we, Kabako?" "They are stowaways, Mr. Flask." "Pull, pull, my fine hearts alive! Pull, my children, pull, my little ones!" Drawingly and soothingly sighed Stubb to his crew, some of whom still showed signs of uneasiness. "Why don't you break your backbones, my boys? What is it to you? What is it you stare at? Those chaps in yonder boat? Tut! They are only 5 more hands come to help us. Never mind from where. The more the merrier. Pull then, do pull. Never mind the brimstone. Devils are good fellows enough. So, there you are now. That's the stroke of 1,000 pounds. That's the stroke to sweep the stakes. Hurrah for the gold cup of sperm oil, my heroes. 3 cheers, men, all hearts alive. Easy, easy, don't be in a hurry, don't be in a hurry. Why don't you snap your oars, you rascals? Bite something, you dogs. So then. Softly, softly. That's it, long and strong. Give way there, give way. The devil fetch ye, ye ragamuffin rapscallions. Ye are all asleep. Stop snoring, ye sleepers, and pull. Pull, will ye pull? Can't ye pull, won't ye? Why in the name of gudgeons and ginger cakes don't you pull? Pull and break something. Pull and start your eyes out here. Here, whipping out the sharp knife from his girdle. Every mother's son of ye draw his knife and pull with the blade. My hair is bothering me. And pull with the blade between his teeth. Who's this? Stubb? Yeah, Stubb. He's really getting into this. That's it. Now you do something. That looks like it. My steel bits. Start her, my silver spoons. Start her, marling spikes. You have 2 LED reading lamps with batteries. You don't use them for that. You just thought they were cool. Nice. Stubb's exordium to his crew is given here at large, because he had rather a peculiar way of talking to them in general, and especially in calculating the religion of rowing. But you must not suppose from the specimen of his sermonizings that he ever flew into downright passions with his congregation. Not at all. And therein consists his chief peculiarity. He would say the most terrific things to his crew, in a tone so strangely compounded of fun and fury, and the fury seemed so calculated, merely as a spice to the fun, that no oarsman could hear such queer invocations without pulling for dear life, and yet pulling for the mere joke of the thing. Besides, he all the time looked so easy and indolent himself, so lounging he managed his steering oar, and so broadly gaped, open-mouthed at times, that the mere sight of such a yawning commander, by sheer force of contrast, acted like a charm upon the crew. Then again, Stubb was one of those odd sort of humorists, whose jollity is sometimes so curiously ambiguous as to put all inferiors on their guard in the matter of obeying them. In obedience to a sign from Ahab, Starbuck was now pulling obliquely. Obliquely. It sounds so wrong. That word sounds so weird. In obedience to the sign from Ahab, Starbuck was now pulling obliquely across Stubb's bow, and when for a moment or so the two boats were pretty near to each other, Stubb hailed the mate. "Mr. Starbuck, larboard boat there, ahoy! A word with ye, sir, if ye please." "Aloha," returned Starbuck, turning around not a single inch as he spoke, still earnestly but whisperingly urging his crew, his face set like a flint from Stubb's. "What think ye of those yellow boys there, sir? Smuggled on board somehow before the ship sailed. Strong boys," in a whisper to his crew. Then, speaking out loud again, "A sad business, Mr. Stubb. Seize her, my lads. But never mind, Mr. Stubb. All for the best. Let all your crew pull strong, come what will. Spring, my men, spring. There's hogsheads of sperm ahead, Mr. Stubb, and that's what ye came for. Pull, my boys. Sperm's the play. This at least is duty and profit, hand in hand." Aye, I thought as much, soliloquized Stubb, when the boats diverged. "As soon as I clapped eye on them, I thought so. Aye, and that's what he went into the afterhold for so often, as Doughboy long suspected. They were hidden down there. The white whale's at the bottom of it. Well, so be it. Can't be helped. All right. Give away, men. It ain't the white whale today. Give way." Now the advent of these outlandish strangers at such a critical instant as the lowering of the boats from the deck, this had not unreasonably awakened a sort of superstitious amazement in some of the ship's company. But Archie's fancied discovery, having some time previous got abroad among them, though indeed not credited then, this had in some small measure prepared them for the event. It took off the extreme edge of their wonder, and so what with all this and Stubb's confident way of accounting for their appearance, they were for the time freed from superstitious surmisings, though the affair still left abundant room for all manner of wild conjectures as to dark Ahab's precise agency in the matter from the beginning. For me, I silently recalled the mysterious shadows I had seen creeping on board the Pequod during the dim Nantucket dawn, as well as the enigmatical hintings of the unaccountable Elijah. Meantime, Ahab, out of hearing of his officers, having sighted the furthest to windward, was still ranging ahead of the other boats, and circumstance bespeaking how potent a crew was pulling him. Those tiger-yellow creatures of his seemed all steel and whalebone. Like 5 trip hammers, they rose and fell with regular strokes of strength, which periodically started the boat along the water like a horizontal burst boiler out of a Mississippi steamer. As for Fadala, who was seen pulling the harpooner oar, he had thrown aside his black jacket and displayed his naked chest with the whole part of his body above the gunwale, clearly cut against the alternating depressions of the watery horizon, while at the other end of the boat, Ahab, with one arm like a fencer's, thrown half backward into the air, as if to counterbalance any tendency to trip. Ahab was seen steadily managing his steering oar, as in 1,000 boat lowerings ere the white whale had torn him. All at once the outstretched arm gave a peculiar motion and then remained fixed, while the boat's 5 oars were seen simultaneously peaked. Boat and crew sat motionless on the sea. Instantly the 3 spread boats in the rear paused on their way. The whales had irregularly settled bodily down into the blue, thus giving no distantly discernible token of the movement, though from his closer vicinity Ahab had observed it. "Every man look out along his oars," cried Starbuck. Thou, Queequeg, stand up. Nimbly springing up on the triangular raised box in the bow, the savage stood erect there and was with intensely eager eyes gazed off towards the spot where the chase had last been descried. Likewise upon the extreme stern of the boat, where it was also triangularly platformed, level with the gunwale, Starbuck himself was seen coolly and adroitly balancing himself to the jerking tossings of his chip of a craft, and silently eyeing the vast blue eye of the sea. Not very far distant Flask's boat was also lying breathlessly still, its commander recklessly standing upon the top of the loggerhead, a stout sort of post rooted in the keel, and rising some 2 feet above the level of the stern platform. It is used for catching turns with the whale line. Its top is not more spacious than the palm of a man's hand, and standing upon such a base as that, Flask seemed perched on the masthead of some ship which had sunk to all but her trucks. But Little King Post was small and short, and at the same time Little King Post was full of a large and tall ambition, so that his loggerhead standpoint of his did by no means satisfy King Post. I can't see 3 seas off. Tip us up an oar there, and let me into that. Upon this, Daggoo, with either hand upon the gunwale, to steady his way, swiftly slid aft, and then erecting himself, volunteered his lofty shoulders as a pedestal. "Good a masthead as any, sir. Will you mount?" "That I will, thank ye very much, my fine fellow. Only I wish you 50 feet taller." Whereupon, planting his feet firmly against 2 opposite planks of the boat, the gigantic negro stooping a little, presented his flat palm to Flask's foot, and then putting Flask's hand on his hearse-palmed head, and bidding him spring as he himself should toss. With one dexterous fling, landed the little man high and dry on his shoulders. So he weep. And here was Flask now standing, the goo with one lifted arm, furnishing him with a breast hand to lean against and steady himself by. At any time it is a strange sight to the tyro to see with what wondrous habitude of unconscious skill the whaleman will maintain an erect posture in his boat, even when pitched about by the most riotously perverse and cross-running seas. Still more strange to see him giddily perched upon the loggerhead itself under such circumstances. But the sight of little Flask mounted upon gigantic Daggoo was yet more curious, for sustaining himself with a cool, indifferent, easy, unthought of, barbaric majesty, the noble Negro, with every roll of the sea, harmoniously rolled his fine form. And his broad back, flaxen-haired Flask, seemed a snowflake. The bearer looked nobler than the rider. Though truly vivacious, tumultuous, ostentatious little Flask would now and then stump with impatience, but not one added heave did he thereby give to the Negro's lordly chest. So have I seen passion and vanity stamping the living magnanimous earth, but the earth did not alter her tides and her seasons for that. Meanwhile, Stubb, the second mate, betrayed no such far-gazing solicitudes. The whales might have made one of their regular soundings, but a temporary dive from mere fright, and if that were the case, Stubb, as his wont in such cases it seems, was resolved to solace the languishing interval with his pipe. He withdrew it from his hatband, where he always wore it, aslant like a feather. He loaded it and rammed home the loading with his thumb end. But hardly had he ignited his match across the rough sandpaper of his hand when Tashtigo, his harpooner, whose eyes had been setting the to windward like two fixed stars, suddenly dropped, light from his erect attitude to his seat, crying out in a quick frenzy of hurry, "Down, down all, and give way! There they are!" To a landsman, no whale nor any sign of a herring would have been visible at that moment. Nothing but a troubled bit of greenish-white water, and then scattered puffs of vapor hovering over it, and suffusingly blowing off to leeward, like the confused scud from white rolling billows. The air around suddenly vibrated and tingled, as it were, like the air over intensely heated plates of iron. Beneath this atmospheric waving and curling, and partially beneath a thin layer of water, also, the whales were swimming. Seen in advance of all the other indications, the puffs of vapor they spouted seemed their forerunning couriers and detached flying outriders. All four boats were now in keen pursuit of that one spot of troubled water and air. But it bade far outstrip them. It flew on, a mass of interblending bubbles borne down a rapid stream from the hills. "Pull, pull, my good boys," said Starbuck in the lowest possible but intensest concentrated whisper to his men. while the sharp, fixed glance from his eyes darted straight ahead of the bow, almost seemed as two visible needles in two unerring binnacle compasses. He did not say much to his crew, though nor did his crew say anything to him. Only the silence of the boat was at intervals startlingly pierced by one of his peculiar whispers, now harsh with command, now soft with entreaty. How different the loud little king-post. Sing out and say something, my hearties. Roar and pull, my thunderbolts. Beach me on their black backs, boys. Only do that for me, and I'll sign over to you my Martha's Vineyard plantation. Boys, including wife and children, boys, lay me on. Oh Lord, but I shall go stark, staring mad. See that white water? And so shouting, he pulled his hat from his head and stamped up and down on it, when picking it up, flirted it far off upon the sea, and finally fell to rearing and plunging in the boat's stern like a crazed colt from the prairie. Look at that chap now, philosophically drawled Stubb, who with his unlighted short pipe mechanically retained between his teeth, at a short distance followed after. He's got fits, that Flask has. Fits? Yes, give him fits. That's the very word. Pitch fists unto 'em. Merrily, hearts alive. Pudding for supper, you know. Merry's the word. Pull, babes, pull, sucklings, pull all. But what the devil are you hurrying about? Softly and steadily, my men. Only pull and keep pulling, nothing more. Crack all your backbones and bite your knives in two. That's all. Take it easy. Why don't you take it easy, I say, and burst all your livers and lungs? But what it was that inscrutable Ahab said to that tiger-yellow crew of his, these were words best omitted here. For you live under the blessed light of the evangelical land. Only the infidel sharks in the audacious seas may give ear to such words, when with tornado brow and eyes of red murder and foam-glued lips, Ahab leaped after his prey. Meanwhile, all the boats tore on. The repeated specific allusions of Flask to that whale, as he called the fictitious monster which he declared to be incessantly tantalizing his boat's bow with its tail. These allusions of his were at times so vivid and lifelike that they would cause some one or two of his men to snatch a fearful look over his shoulder. But this was against all rule, for the oarsmen must put out their eyes and ram a skewer through their necks, usages announcing that they must have no organs but ears and no limbs but arms in these critical moments. It was a sight full of quick wonder and awe, the vast swells of the omnipotent sea, the surging, hollow roar they made as they rolled along the 8 gunwales like gigantic bowls in a boundless bowling green, and the brief suspended agony of the boat, as it would tip for an instant on the knife-like edge of the sharper waves, that almost seemed threatening to cut it in two, the sudden profound dip into the watery glens and hollows, the keen spurrings and goadings to gain the top of the opposite hill, the headlong sled-like slide down its other side. All these with the cries of the headsmen and harpooneers, and the shuddering gasps of the oarsmen, with the wondrous sight of the ivory Pequod bearing down upon her boats with outstretched sails, like a wild hen after her screaming brood. All this was thrilling, not the raw recruit, marching from the bosom of his wife into the fever heat of his first battle, not the dead man's ghost encountering the first unknown phantom in the other world. Neither of these can feel stranger and stronger emotions than that man does, who for the first time finds himself pulling into the churned circle of the hunted sperm whale. The dancing white water made by the chase was now becoming more and more visible, owing to the increasing darkness of the dun cloud shadows flung upon the sea. The jets of vapor no longer blended, but tilted everywhere to right and left. The whales seemed separating their wakes. The boats were pulled more apart, Starbuck giving chase to 3 whales running dead to leeward. Our sail was now set, and, with the still rising wind, we rushed along. The boat going with such madness through the water that the lee oars could scarcely be worked rapidly enough to escape being torn from the rowlocks. So they are really rowing hard. Look at that picture. Queequeg, harpoon in hand, first sprang to his feet. Alrighty, well, let's continue. We've got some excitement here now. Soon we were running through a suffusing wide veil of mist, neither ship nor boat to be seen. "Give way, men," whispered Starbuck, drawing still further aft the sheet of his sail. "There is time to kill a fish yet, before the squall comes. There's white water again. Close to, spring!" Soon after, 2 cries in quick succession on each side of us denoted that the other boats had got fast, but hardly were they overheard, when with a lightning-like hurtling whisper Starbuck said, "Stand up!" and Queequeg, harpoon in hand, sprang to his feet. Though not one of the oarsmen was then facing the life and death peril so close to them ahead, yet with their eyes on the intense countenance of the mate on the stern of the boat, they knew that the imminent instant had come. They heard, too, an enormous wallowing sound, as of 50 elephants stirring in their litter. Meanwhile, the boat was still booming, through the mist, the waves curling and hissing around us like the erected crests of enraged serpents. "That's his hump! There, give it to him!" whispered Starbuck. A short rushing sound leaped out of the boat. It was the darted iron of Queequeg. Then, all in one welded commotion, came an invisible push from astern, while forward the boat seemed striking on a ledge. The sail collapsed and exploded. A gush of scalding vapor shot up nearby. Something rolled and stumbled like an earthquake beneath us. The whole crew were half suffocated as they were tossed helter-skelter into the white curdling cream of the squall. Squall, whale, and harpoon had all blended together, and the whale, merely grazed by the iron, escaped. Though completely swamped, the boat was nearly unharmed. Swimming around it, we picked up the floating oars and, lashing them across the gunwale, tumbled back to our places. There we sat upon our knees, in the sea, the water covering every ribbon plank, so that our downward gazing eyes, the suspended craft, seemed a coral boat grown up to us from the bottom of the ocean. The wind increased to a howl. The waves dashed their bucklers together. The whole squall roared, forked and crackled around us like a white fire upon the prairie, in which unconsumed we were burning, immortal in these jaws of death. In vain we hailed the other boats, as well roared to the live coals down the chimney of a flaming furnace, as hailed those boats in that storm. Meanwhile, the driving scud rack and mist grew darker with the shadows of night. No sign of the ship could be seen. The rising sea forbade all attempts to bail out the boat. The oars were useless as propellers, performing now the office of life preservers. So, cutting the lashing of the waterproof match keg, after many failures, Starbuck contrived to ignite the lamp in the lantern, then stretching it on a waif pole, handed it to Queequeg as the standard bearer of his forlorn hope. There then he sat, holding up the imbecile candle in the heart of that almighty forlornness. There then he sat, the sign and symbol of a man without faith, hopelessly holding up hope in the midst of despair. Well, what a description. Wet, drenched through, and shivering cold, despairing of ship or boat, we lifted up our eyes as the dawn came on. The mist still spread over the sea. The empty lantern lay crushed in the bottom of the boat. Suddenly, Queequeg started to his feet, hollowing his hand to his ear. We all heard a faint creaking, as of ropes and yards hitherto muffled by the storm. The sound came nearer and nearer. The thick masts were dimly parted by a huge, vague form. Affrighted, we all sprang into the sea as the ship at last loomed into view, bearing right down upon us within a distance of not much more than its length. Floating on the waves, we saw the abandoned boat, as for one instant it tossed and gaped beneath the ship's bows like a chip at the base of a cataract. And then the vast hull rolled over it, and it was seen no more till it came up weltering astern. Again we swam for it. We dashed against it by the seas, and were at last taken up and safely landed aboard. Ere the squall came close to, the other boats had cut loose from their fish and returned to the ship in good time. The ship had given us up, but was still cruising if haply it might light upon some token of our perishing, an oar or a lance pole. So they definitely expected these guys to be dead. Or something. Exciting chapter that was. Finally, we get some action. Whew. Apologies for that. For the yawnings. Seems I'm getting my breath back. Remember to hydrate, folks. And also to stretch. Whew. Right, so we've got this one. And I think I'll be able to get through these two chapters. I'll be skipping this one. Yeah, I'll definitely be skipping this one. Alrighty then, let us continue then, shall we? Chapter 49, The Hyena. There are certain queer times and occasions in the strange mixed affair we call life, when a man takes his whole universe for a vast practical joke, though the wit thereof he but dimly discerns, and more than suspects that the joke is at nobody's expense but his own. However, nothing dispirits, and nothing seems worthwhile disputing. He bolts down all events, all creeds and beliefs and persuasions, all hard things visible and invisible, never mind how knobby, as an ostrich of potent digestion gobbles down bullets and gunflints. Jen of the North, hello, welcome in. Moby Dick, for silly people. Moby doesn't like whales. The end. Data Moby is the whale. Jen, welcome in. You missed out on a lot of complaining earlier. Dull. Hope you is well today, Jen. But yeah, I had some serious complaints, and I've skipped. How many is it now? 2? Is it 2? I think it's 2 chapters that I've skipped. Could be 3. I don't know. You made a buffalo chicken poutine. It was amazing. Ooh. I don't know what poutine is, but I know what chicken is. And it sounds interesting. So you are well fed. Like a stuffed turkey. Alrighty. Let us continue. Okay, gunflints. And as for small difficulties and worryings, prospects of sudden disaster, peril of life and limb, all these and death itself seemed to him only sly, good-natured hits, and jolly punches in the side bestowed by the unseen and unaccountable old joker. That odd sort of wayward mood I'm speaking of comes over a man only in some time of extreme tribulation. It comes in the very midst of his earnestness, so that what just before might have seemed to him a thing most momentous now seems but a part of the general joke. There is nothing like the perils of whaling to breed this free and easy sort of genial desperado philosophy, and with it I now regarded this whole voyage of the Pequod and the great wild white whale its object. "Quick, said I, when they had dragged me, the last man, to the deck, and I was still shaking myself in my jacket to fling off the water. "Quick, my fine friend, does this sort of thing often happen?" Without much emotion, though soaked through just like me, he gave me to understand that such things did often happen. "Mr. Sub," said I, turning to that worthy who, buttoned up his oil jacket, was now calmly smoking his pipe in the rain. "Mr. Stubb, I think I have heard you say that of all whalemen you ever met, our chief mate, Mr. Starbuck, is by far the most careful and prudent. I suppose, then, that going plump in a flying whale, with your sails set in a foggy squall, is the height of a whaleman's discretion?" "Certain. I've lowered for whales from a leaking ship in a gale off Cape Horn." "Mr. Flask," said I, turning to little King Post, who was standing close by, "you are experienced in these things, and I am not. Will you tell me whether it is an unalterable law in this fishery, Mr. Flask, for an oarsman to break his own back, pulling himself back foremost into death's jaws?" "Can't you twist that smaller?" said Flask. "Yes, that's the law. I should like to see a boat's crew backing up water to a whale's face foremost. Ha ha! The whale would give them squint for squint, mind that." Here then, from 3 impartial witnesses, I had a deliberate statement of the entire case. Considering, therefore, that squalls and capsizings in the water and consequent what the heck is a bivouac? Bivouac? Now that is one word that I don't know. We found our first new word, folks. Because all the other ones I already know. Right. It could be a made-up word. We found some of those as well. Bivouacs. On the deep were matters of common occurrence in this kind of life. Considering that at this superlatively critical instant of going on to the whale, I must resign my life into the hands of him who steered the boat. Oftentimes, a fellow who at that very moment is in his impetuousness upon the point of scuttling the craft with his own frantic stampings. Considering that the particular disaster to our own particular boat was chiefly to be imputed to Starbuck's driving onto his whale almost in the teeth of a squall, and considering that Starbuck, notwithstanding, was famous for his great heedfulness in the fishery. Considering that I belonged to this uncommonly prudent Starbuck's boat, and finally considering in what a devil's chase I was implicated, touching the white whale, taking all things together, I say, I thought I might as well go below and make a rough draft of my will. He just realized how dangerous it is. Alright, let me catch up here. It's cheese and gravy over the chicken and fries. Ooh. Use the Force, Senator. That Star Wars movie was just awful. Excuse me. So he's thinking about writing up his will. And that might be a good start, hey? Quick, said I. Come along, you shall be my lawyer, executor, and legatee. Or I don't know how to say this word. Legatee? Am I saying it right? Anyway, it may seem strange that of all men sailors should be tinkering at their last wills and testaments, but there are no people in the world more fond of that diversion. This was the fourth time in my nautical life that I had done the same thing. After the ceremony was concluded upon the present occasion, I felt all the easier. A stone was rolled away from my heart. Besides, all the days I should now live would be as good as the days that Lazarus lived after his resurrection. A supplementary clean gain of so many months or weeks, as the case may be. I survived myself. My death and burial were locked up in my chest. I looked around me tranquilly and contentedly, like a quiet ghost with a clean conscience, sitting inside the bar of a snug family vault. Now then, thought I, unconsciously rolling up the sleeves of my frock. Here goes for a cool, collected dive at death and destruction, and the devil fetched the hindmost. Now, that That is an interesting face. You can see this guy has been through some stuff. He's seen things. Well, we made it all the way to chapter 50, folks. Ahab's boat and crew. Fedallah. Who would have thought it, Flask? Cried Stubb. If I had but one leg, you would not catch me in a boat, unless maybe to stop the plug hole with my timber toe. Oh, he's a wonderful old man. I don't think it's so strange, after all, on that account, said Flask. If his leg were off at the hip, now, it would be a different thing. That would disable him. But he has one knee. And a good part of the other left, you know. I don't know that, my little man. I've never yet saw him kneel. These guys. Among whale-wise people, it has often been argued whether, considering the paramount importance of his life to the success of the voyage, it is right for a whaling captain to jeopardize that life in the active perils of the chase. So Tamerlane's soldiers often argued with tears in their eyes, whether that invaluable life of his ought to be carried into the thickest of the fight. But with Ahab the question assumed a modified aspect, considering that with two legs, man is but a hobbling wit in all times of danger. Considering that the pursuit of whales is always under great and extraordinary difficulties, that every individual moment, indeed, then comprises of a peril. Under these circumstances, is it wise for any maimed man to enter a whale boat in the hunt? As a general thing, the joint owners of the Pequod must have plainly thought not. Ahab well knew that, although his friends at home would think little of his entering a boat in certain comparatively harmless vicissitudes of the chase, for the sake of being near the scene of action and giving his orders in person, yet for Captain Ahab to have a boat actually apportioned to him as a regular headsman in the hunt. Above all, for Captain Ahab to be supplied with 5 extra men, and that same boat's crew, he well knew that such generous conceits never entered the heads of the owners of the Pequod. Therefore, he had not solicited a boat's crew from them, nor had he in any way hinted his desires on that head. Nevertheless, he had taken private measures of his own touching all that matter. Until Kabaka's published discovery, the sailors had little foreseen it, though, to be sure, when, after being a little while out of port, all hands had concluded the customary business of fitting the whaleboats for service, when some time after this Ahab was now and then found bestirring himself in the matter of making thole-pins with his own hands for what was thought to be one of the spare boats, and even solicitously cutting the small wooden skewers, which when the line is running out of are pinned over the groove in the bow. When all this was observed in him, and particularly his solicitude in having an extra coat of sheathing in the bottom of the boat, as if to make it better withstand the pointed pressure of his ivory limb, and also the anxiety he evinced in exactly shaping the thigh-board, and clumsy cleat, as it is sometimes called, the horizontal piece in the boat's bow, for bracing the knee against in darting or stabbing at the whale. When it was observed how often he stood up in that boat, with his solitary knee fixed in the semicircular depression in the cleat, and with the carpenter's chisel gouged out a little here and straightened it a little there, all these things, I say, had awakened much interest and curiosity at the time. But almost everybody supposed that this particular preparative heedfulness in Ahab must only be with a view to the ultimate chase of Moby Dick, for he had already revealed his intention to hunt that mortal monster in person. But such a supposition did by no means involve the remotest suspicion as to any boat's crew being assigned to that boat. Now, with the subordinate phantoms, what wonder remained soon waned away, for in a whaler wonders soon wane. Besides, now and then such unaccountable odds and ends of strange nations come up from unknown nooks and ash-holes of the earth to man these floating outlaws of whalers, and the ships themselves often pick up such queer castaway creatures found tossing about the open sea on planks, bits of wreck, oars, whaleboats, canoes, blown off Japanese junks, and whatnot. But that Beelzebub himself might climb up the side and step down into the cabin to chat with the captain, and it would not create any unsubduable excitement in the forecastle. But be all this as it may, certain it is that while the subordinate phantoms soon found their place among the crew, though still it, as it were, somehow distinct from them, yet that hair-turbaned Fedallah remained a muffled mystery to the last. Whence he came is a mannerly world like this, but what sort of unaccountable tie he soon evinced himself to be linked with Ahab's peculiar fortunes, nay, so far as to have some sort of a half-hinted influence. Heaven knows, but it might have been even authority over him. All this none knew, but one cannot sustain an indifferent air concerning Fedallah. He was such a creature as civilized, domestic people in the temperate zone only see in their dreams, and that but dimly, but the like of whom now and then glide among the unchanging Asiatic communities, especially the Oriental Isles to the east of the continent, those insulated, immemorial, unalterable countries, which even in these modern days still preserve much of the ghostly aboriginalness of Earth's primal generations. When the memory of the first man was a distinct recollection, and all men, his descendants, unknowing whence he came, eyed each other as real phantoms, and asked of the sun and the moon why they were created, and to what end. When, though, according to Genesis, the angels indeed consorted with the daughters of men, the devils also add the uncanonical ravens, indulged in mundane amours. Alrighty, folks, that is where we shall end for today. I will say, I'm quite impressed that I didn't find too many to skip. However, this chapter I will skip. Maybe. We shall see. But, maybe I won't. Maybe I will. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'm a trooper and tomorrow I'll read it. So, there we go. Right. It is dictionary time. Right, let me see. What are you guys talking about here? That Star Wars movie that Data was referencing. A loose joke. Alright. Let us see. Well now, here we go. I did not expect to find it. Bivouac. Okay, so I did say it correctly after much trial and error. Military or mountaineering camp. A very simple temporary camp that is set up and used by soldiers. Don't know if you guys can read that. There it is. 2. Mountaineering. Brief overnight stay. A short stay, usually overnight, often with minimum equipment. Early 18th century, via French from probably Low German bivouac. From bivouac. From by, wake, which is watch, vigil. Okay, interesting. So, camp or short stay? Temporary camp. Here we go. Note need. There we go. And that is it for today. a good one it was. We managed to get at least a little bit of exciting whaling going on, even if it was a miss. Please wait. De-wolfing. Platypus. Yeah. Platypuses are funny. Yeah. So... remember how I told you I was complaining a lot in the start, Jen? No cap tonight? Nah, didn't need it. Didn't feel like wearing a cap today. Is Jen here? Is Jen still with us? Or did she run away and sleep? Oh, there she is. A little... So yeah. Earlier, when I started, there was a lot of complaints. And I thought to myself, if I am going to read this book... Your game was too loud. Yeah, no. Because I was, like I said, complaining a lot earlier in the stream. And I thought, if I want to limit the amount of complaining and not like lose interest in the book, I am going to have to skip chapters. Because once you get into those chapters where he gets all philosophical and talking all sorts of nonsense that, in my opinion, shouldn't even be in the book because it's got nothing to do with anything. Yeah, I decided it's better to just skip them. Now this last chapter, not sure if I'm going to skip it. I will look into it. But yeah, maybe I read it, maybe I don't. Tomorrow we'll see. I'm currently slower than a snail on downers. Data, it sounds like you need an 8-hour nap. And quite frankly, this book's got me wiped out yet again. So, yeah, I feel like doing that as well. Where's my pillow? I don't have one here. I have this guy though. He's so soft and squishy. Bleh. Anyway, let us find somebody to raid. Who shall we raid? See a few good people. Ooh, a plushie. Yes, I have many plushies. However, However, they are not here at the moment. This is the only one. And he's my fidget toy. Along with my other fidget toy. Especially when I become a little anxious, and this one, they both actually really help. And other times I just want something to do with my fingers. There are all sorts of like textures, and there's even a smooth one. Little rolly bits, buttons. Oh yeah, and that one. And another button. Are they in the media room? What, my other plushies? No. Some of them are in a container in my cupboard. Others are on my drawers, chest of drawers next to my bed, looking like they're ready for a family photo. And I have another container somewhere, not exactly sure where, maybe in my bedroom cupboard, also filled with plushies. Yeah, this one's a fidgeter. In a way. It's not like that. Yeah, it's a fidgeter, yeah. You get different types, but yeah, this one's a fidgeter. Got all sorts of like little things going. Little buttons. This one's also a button, but it also turns, which is kind of cool. Got all sorts of different, I don't know, textile. I'm not exactly sure how to describe it, but yeah, it's a fidget toy. You need that too? Yeah. I got this one fairly cheapish. I once had a look at these on somebody's review. Oh no, they're cheap. They're this cheap and so cheap, and I know they're not very expensive at all. Yeah, until I found one. You want to tell me these things are cheap? Really? Wow. Nah. They are... I won't say cheap. Cheaply made, yes. I have a broken button. The yellow one is like... Can you see? And some other things that don't work so nicely. But it does the job. If you get one that's well made, it's, I'd say, reasonably priced, but I won't call them cheap. Then again, I live in South Africa, where everything is expensive. So what's cheap for someone else is not cheap for me. However, is it worth it? Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, it's lived in my drawer, and every once in a while I reach for it. And if something is around and I reach for it, it's worth it. I have another fidget toy. You know those poppers? I have a double, you know, a small little one about this big, with just 2 pops. That one is in my handbag for when I need it. Sometimes I get bored, and then I need to fidget. And it's the quietest one out of all of them, so... I don't remember what else I got, but I think the other things that I got I thought was boring and I just threw them away. We had a free clicker from Link's spray promotion, but it was not used much because you were very medicated, so it was a bit of a zombie. Ah. But yeah, I'd say that what is it? An octagon? I'm not sure what the shape is. I don't know the name. Even for a cheap one, it's still worth it. Because I did manage to find me a cheap one. It's not the best made. Does the job though. Definitely worth it. Definitely worth it to get a fidget. A fidget toy. Fidget toys are the best. And this one we saw and we just thought it was cute, so got it. You know clickers? Ah yes, the click counter. I've seen those, I think. I'm not sure, but I have an idea of what a clicker is. But yeah, those sound fun. Those sound very fun. Plain stuff use them? Now I'm curious. Does it look like this? Let me just change. Does it look like this thing? Because that's what I had in mind. And that and this thing. Or digit mechanical or electronic device. Yes. Yeah, like this thing. Typically counts up to 9,999 and includes a reset knob. Inventory management to sports laps and knitting. I have a counter on both my knitting machines. It comes with it. Looks a little different, but it's got like a little arm. So basically when you take the thing and you slide it across, with every motion forwards and backwards it counts. So it counts every net line you make. Basically like that thing. Only you do it with your thumb. Yeah. Thought so. Yeah. Alrighty folks, I have found our lucky target. Our lucky victim. And we are going to go and give her a almost deadly snuggle hug raid. So let's go and give her, show her some love. There she is. We shall be raiding out to Armor of Faith. She's currently crocheting, I think, is what she's doing. But she's busy with a plushie. It was free, so you thought, why not? Yeah, those counters are handy to have, especially if you need to count a lot of things. Like, for example, when you're knitting. That's a good one. But yeah, there she is. Go check her out if you get left behind. Because I know Twitch doesn't always take everybody with us. There is the raid message. Give that a sneaky little copy. There we go, and I shall also copy that, otherwise I forget. We can't have that. That's just nonsense if I forget, because that's nonsense. One of these days I'm going to need a clip or something. But thank you everybody for joining me for today's reading of Moby Dick. Probably very rusty. Probably. Nothing that a good what you call it, de-rusting spray won't fix. It depends, of course, on how much rust is on there. But yeah, I also have all sorts of things that hangs out in my cupboard and becomes all rusty and nonsense like that. It happens, it happens. Coke. One for me and one for it. Yeah. Coke is fair for de-rusting. I won't recommend it because of the sugar content, but if you have nothing else, sure. Yeah, Coke is quite nasty. However, if you use Coke right, it's actually beneficial. It's when you drink too much of it when it's a problem. The only time I drink Coke is when one of two things happen. One, I have an excessively strong craving for it, and then I only buy those super small ones that you get, because we have those small ones. And two, if I feel unwell concerning the stomach. That is the only time I drink Coke. And then when I'm feeling ill, then it's flat Coke. You shake out all the gas. Mini cans, yeah. But we have the mini bottles. We have the mini bottles as well. They're quite adorable, actually. I have an empty one, but it's outside now. But yeah, very, very, very handy to have those small amounts, because I am not a big fan of fizzy drinks. I don't like the feeling of the fizz on my tongue. It feels like it burns. So. Flat, no fizz Coke will clean you right out. Fun fact, Data. That is actually how I like my Coke. Flat. I don't... If I can get some of that fizz out, I am happy. Very, very happy. Yeah, the reason why I haven't rated out yet is because our target got rated, so I'm just giving a little bit of time. So things can calm down a bit, and then it's our turn. But yeah, flat Coke is good for when your stomach is unhappy. So yeah. Anyway, things seems to have calmed down. Coke Block seems interesting, but meh. Oh, Coke Black. Hold on, what is that? You say it has no caffeine? That's not what it says here. It says it's coffee flavored. Here's okay, here is a headline of one of the sites on the search results. How Coke Black was Coca-Cola's most epic fail. It looked like Coke, but it wasn't Coke. And then we woke up. Coca-Cola Black became America's worst nightmare. That's hilarious. Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, Coke Black and Coke Zero are two different things. I've had Coke Zero. It tastes worse than dishwashing liquid. In my opinion. Because of all the weird things they have to put in there to make it seem slightly sweet. Yeah, Coke Zero and Coke Black are two completely different entities. Coke Life is just awful. I think I've seen that one. Ah, yes, it is the green one. Yeah, I think we had it here, at least in my area, for a very short time. And I've never seen a green can of Coca-Cola again. Healthy Coke? Nah. Coca-Cola trying out all these strange and interesting flavors. I respect them for trying, but thanks, but no thanks. They will not be tricking me into that disaster. If it's not original or as close to original as they can get nowadays, it's a no from me. No, just no. The only other flavor that I might try is if they had like a caramel flavor. Maybe. But I don't think so. If I want zero, I'll have a cucumber. I don't like the taste of cucumber. But I would rather eat a cucumber for hydration before I drink Coke Zero. That is how much I dislike Coke Zero. Yeah, what can I say? And then I know people who are absolutely gaga about it, and I'm like, you're weird. If I want to drink Coke, I don't want to get all the other crap. Yep, that is true. I don't know what it is with these weird companies and their strange ideas. It's good for that. Money and greed. Mm. And you can get weirdos that absolutely love some of these flavors. And I'm just wondering, what did they do to their taste buds? Because they had to have done something to their taste buds if they could if they could like some of these weird flavors. Indeed, Stata, they do. Alrighty, folks. Here is a shouty for Armor of Faith again. That is who we shall be raiding. And here is our raid message again. Give that a sneaky little copy. And let's go and show Armor some love. Thank you again for joining me today during this struggle of a read. And I shall see you in Armor's chat, and also tomorrow on the next read. Hopefully, I won't complain too much. But I appreciate all the time you guys spend with me. God bless everyone. Yeah, I'm kind of tired. This book is heavy to read. So God bless everybody. Love you all. See you on the next one. Cheers, and whichever time of day it may be for you, whether it be morning, afternoon, or evening, maybe. I don't know. Uplifting. May it be good. And I shall see you tomorrow for some more Moby Dick. And yeah, hopefully I won't struggle too much like I did today. So before I pass out, let's go and share the love with Armor. Bye bye.